My name is Josiah Houston, and I am a member of Team Hercules here at WPAA-TV. Tonight, we are speaking with our honored guest, Kevin Markowski, as we celebrate his long and storied career as the Record Journal's freelance editorial cartoonist for the last 41 years. Good evening, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you this evening.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
So our first question for you is quite a simple one. Do you remember the first thing that inspired you to start drawing as a child?
I guess I don't, other than I was a kid and I drew like all kids do. And I have 4 younger brothers and a couple younger sisters, so there were, pads of paper, crayons, pencils, coloring books all over the house. And so I did that as much as anybody, maybe a little more, and just kept at it, I guess, when I went through all the various schools.
So as you were growing up, I do believe it was the golden age of comic books, and they were experiencing quite a surge in popularity. And I imagine as a kid, you might have read a few in your time.
I read comic books all the time.
So what were some of your favorite comic books?
I was a Marvel Comics fan, so it was Captain America, the Hulk, Fantastic Four. I got into DC Comics a little bit later on. It was a little more lowbrow, in my opinion, and it was fine with me. I was just looking to be entertained and see, bright colors, and nicely drawn heroes and stuff. So most of my friends were loyal only to one label or another.
They chose a team, they chose a side, and they stuck with it.
I was okay with both, but mostly Marvel, yeah.
Okay. So what did comic books perhaps teach you about visual storytelling that you were able to carry into your own work?
What I do for the most part is not sequential art like graphic novel or even a Sunday comic. It's usually single panels, but once in a while I use a multiple panel format. And I think it taught me about timing, that a story unfolds at a certain pace, and there are probably subtle rules and unwritten rules about that, but I think they become instinctual after a while. And I may try to do more of that in the near future because I'm going to have a lot more free time soon. So
awesome. So perhaps a return to some long form projects.
Possibly.
Because in our research of your past history, we did come across a college comic strip known as Timmy the Human Dime.
Where did you find that?
Who was powered by gamma rays, which does sound a little bit close to Marvel's
yes, well,
Hulk,
of course.
I believe.
Yeah, at that point I was a senior in college, so I was a little self-mockery. I bought into the, gamma rays could change everybody into a, Spider-Man or into a rubbery guy.
The scientific catch-all for any
sure.
problem, right?
So that actually ended up being a kind of a senior project at Wesleyan, where I went to college, and there was nobody in the studio art department who was a cartoonist that could teach me cartooning and in particular sequential art. So. They allowed me to create an independent study class with there just happened to be a lawyer at a big law firm. His name was Ray Andrews, taking a year sabbatical to be a cartoonist.
Oh,
just
wow.
at the right time.
How serendipitous.
Right, it was. And so my father knew one of his partners who connected me with him, and he agreed to do it. So
so you had a full independent study with someone who was
once
a
week I'd go to
cartoonist.
his house, bring all my material there, and he taught me some good tricks and devices about just everything, shading, lettering.
So just real professional insights that you might not have been able to glean without, going into the world and figuring them out for
That's
yourself.
Right. He was the first professional cartoonist I ever met.
Oh, wow.
And he did it on the side, the way I've done it on the side for 41 years.
So he was almost a role model in the same instance where you kind of took the same approach of keeping art.
I never knew I would, but yeah.
We don't always make those decisions.
Right.
You can't see it unless you see it, right?
Yep.
So he might have been the first one that you saw do it, and you went, oh, this is an option for me, huh?
Yep.
So I know that for myself when I'm a writer, and as a young writer, it took me years of mimicking, writers that I respected in order to try to really find my own voice and style. Now, I imagine the process was probably similar for your development as an artist. What great illustrators and cartoonists did you turn to for inspiration as you were finding your artistic identity?
In the early years, I read the Sunday Funnies, every inch of it, and the papers were this big back then. Now they're, my 13-year-old daughter, it warms my heart to see her go for the funnies on Sunday, but I feel bad for her because she's reading these, you almost need a a magnifying glass to see them now.
It's
But
not the heyday of like the big open,
and there were
full
fewer of them,
layout.
I think, too. But anyway, so yeah, I was reading those all the time, and of course, Peanuts. Charles Schulz was probably the one I paid the most attention to, and around probably high school years, I started to become interested in comic artists from before I was able to read. So Crazy Cat by George Harriman, Pogo by Walt Kelly. These are all books I still have at home, and these guys were masters. I mean, very few people had the skills of these guys like that.
So your opening into the world was really the Sunday comics, but
Yeah.
then once you started to really fall in love and you started to look back into history and see who the big names were and
Yes.
and draw from them.
And I will say, though, that in since that time, there are some wonderful masters of daily comics and weekly comics. The best, I think, in my lifetime is Bill Waterson, who drew Calvin and Hobbes.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then just
Calvin
like
and
a
Hobbes,
switch got flipped and he stopped doing it. And I don't know where he is. He's sort of in hiding. I think he releases something on the sly once in a while, but he's like J.D. Salinger and,
Yeah. He's the J.D. Salinger of
tucked
cartoons,
away somewhere,
right?
and at the absolute pinnacle of his craft. He was, I mean, and it's my opinion, but I think a lot of people would agree. He was just the best.
Well, I know that Calvin and Hobbes is my personal favorite
It's
cartoon.
outstanding. I have a bunch of those books at home as well.
And you can see just one panel out of context, or just one panel by itself, and some people even have them framed in their rooms. It's very much still in the cultural zenith. He never, when you leave at the top of your game, you don't really disappear, and maybe there's something to be said for that as well. But it's always hard to watch a genius stop making stuff for us.
Oh,
to
we
appreciate.
want more,
Exactly. We always want more.
If he's been doing something for himself, I hope a bootleg copy of it comes out, or he decides to release. Here's the 20 years worth of material.
The same thing they're hoping with J.D. Salinger is
Yeah.
like, what's in the vault when he finally passes away? Are we going to get our next big masterpiece? Well, let's hope that we get some more Calvin and Hobbes along the way. Now, you were talking about this mentor that you had at Wesleyan, who really was the first person that you saw doing what you ended up actually following in your own and in his own footsteps without realizing it. Now, turning something you're passionate about, like an art form, from a hobby into a career, it's no small feat to be doing something like this, let alone for as long as you've been doing it. When was the first time that someone noticed a piece of your artwork and the way they responded to it? It made you feel like, you know what, maybe I can really do this. Maybe I can take a crack at this professionally.
I think I got encouraged by my parents, who seemed to be impressed. Parents are proud of their kids all the time and praise them and stuff.
Stuff on the refrigerator and
Yeah.
what have you.
And I probably had dreams back then of making a living at it, but I think it was probably not until college when I was on the editorial board of the Wesleyan Argus, the newspaper, and they gave me this title of graphics editor, which was a little overblown because all I did was line art, cartoons, and
It's good. Looks good on the resume, though,
yeah,
for
I
sure.
suppose.
It's a resume builder.
It is, but I don't think it ever got me anywhere. But it was probably in college where I repeated deadlines and they were counting on me to deliver something. So, in one regard, it was a job I loved doing, and I've not paid in college, but the idea that someone would pay me for drawing cartoons seemed like some miracle to me at the time.
And it could give you a realistic sense of what the expectations
I think it did.
of doing it at a higher level would look like,
and
right?
what sort of quality. I have to concentrate. It couldn't just be a scribble like the stuff I would do with my brothers. The end result, you work at it and revise it and refine it, and it probably takes longer than people realize.
On that note, how many stages do you think you go through when you're developing a cartoon?
The weekly ones I do
The weekly
now.
ones, yeah. How
Always,
many phases of coming back to it do you?
I usually try to read the paper early. I read the paper, several days a week, the Record Journal, to figure out if I've got a subject that's worthy of a cartoon. And, I go running a lot. I run a lot. I used to run a lot of marathons. When I'm running, that's what clears my
You're
head.
a real runner.
Yeah,
I
run
marathons.
20 full marathons.
Not a jogger.
No,
a runner.
About 50 half marathons, and now I draw the line at half marathons, and I didn't even do one last year. But that's what would clear my head the most, or other forms of physical exercise, or even sometimes just driving. But in terms of the mechanics of the actual illustration, I always do at least 2 thumbnails just to get the composition right. And sometimes 3, 4, 5 of them, before I get out my real paper, the Bristol board that I draw on, and
And then get really to work.
put the full size thing together. Yeah, so the thumbnails are the answer. They really help you with
the overall design of how it's going to look
the
before you-
composition.
Okay.
And a trick that I remember learning when I used to go to the Record Journal office and do my work there once a week. There was somebody there, may have been a photographer, who said, hold a mirror up. Draw your drawing and then hold it up, hold a mirror, or hold it to a mirror, and right away you'll see if it's skewed in any way, if you're favoring one side or the other. I don't do that anymore because I think I've figured out how to understand if
You've
my
ingrained it more naturally,
yeah
instinctively.
if my composition is strong.
All right. So on that note, since my next question was actually going to go directly to the kind of tools that you do use in this process, you've been working as a cartoonist for over 4 decades now,
Yep.
which is a wonderful opportunity for us in this conversation to examine how your passion and how your craft has really evolved over time. Because time changes everything, and everything has to keep up and evolve as we go forward. So I was curious about starting with the tools, since you were discussing a little bit about your process and how you go from thumbnails and then bring out the real paper that you use and what have you. What tools did you use when you first started creating cartoons and your characters, and how have those tools changed and updated throughout 4 decades?
Yep. Well, when I was a kid, it was pencils and crayons. I mean, and, my
Did you have
grandfather.
a favorite color crayon?
No, probably
No,
not.
I've always had a favorite color
Which,
crayon.
burnt
Forest
sienna?
green.
Okay, that's a nice
I
color.
loved forest green my whole life.
Oh,
Yeah.
I like your style. It's a good color. No, it was just Crayola, 64 of them. I mean, I did have the other siblings, so we all shared that. And
I didn't have that problem
No,
as much,
okay.
the sharing issue. Yeah.
But so when I was in college, I don't think I was using the Crow quill pen, but that I eventually went to a bottle of India ink and a steel point nib Crow quill pen. It's a Hunt 107, and that got suggested to me while I was in college. I met there was a professional cartoonist doing some pretty big league stuff in Meriden, Warren Sattler, and my girlfriend at the time knew his family, and I met him. I went to his house, and
Nice.
all I wanted to know was what he used, and it was India ink and a Hunt 107 nib, and I use that to this day.
Yeah. Obviously, if you see someone out there doing it and making it, maybe what do you use? I want to use what you use.
And Warren was outstanding. I mean, he drew the Jackson twins, which were a daily, international strip on the comics page, and he also worked for National Lampoon and other.
Wow.
Yeah, he was
Something I recognized.
very skilled guy, and I'm not saying that I've developed skills like his, but I use a pen.
But you use the same tools.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
So, and for a while there, so I started out that way, and I used Bristol board, smooth Bristol board as the paper, because you'll rip this kind of paper to shreds with a steel pen point. So it's kind of thicker. For a while, I found it was quicker to use felt tip pens,
Okay.
but they don't give you the organic, lively line that wet India ink and a steel pen give you. So even though it takes longer and it's messier and sometimes I spill it, it makes a better cartoon. So
Makes it more vibrant, you're saying? The lines
it makes it, in my mind, in my eye, it makes it more alive, yeah. And today I scan it and edit in Photoshop, or I'm learning another program called Medibang that I may go to.
So you're still learning new programs and updating your tools to this day.
Yeah,
Wow.
always, and I always will. But in a way, I have to, because now that I am using a computer, they change.
The old tools don't apply anymore.
They
right?
stop supporting old software. So anyway, to get back to when I first started, I think 100% of editorial cartoons when I first started were in black and white.
Okay.
If there were any in color, it was a very rare thing. I don't think there were. So all you needed to do was get a black and white image suitable for publication. And there was non-reproducible light blue. People would use, if you look at originals of cartoons, like at a cartoon art museum or when there's a temporary show somewhere, oftentimes you'll see the light blue. They don't have to erase it because it's not photo reproducible. So
Okay.
they leave it there, and then they put their black ink over it. And back in the 80s, when I started, in the 90s, there would be a graphics shading film, like a graphic screen, either see-through graphics or zip-a-tone. It would be dots or lines or other patterns, and it would make your grays. So you get your razor knife and you put over, like, can people see this?
Yeah.
Those are these see-through graphic screens or zip-a-tone. That's what the guy's pants are there. The red stuff, which reproduces as black, this is how you made grays.
Okay.
Or you cross-hatched, which was a lot more time-consuming, and cross-hatching is centuries old, and it's how people made shading and pen and ink drawings, forever and ever. But I think it's a lost art today because now we've got Photoshop.
And we don't have to shade in that fashion, so no one learns how to do it anymore.
It's optional. You could do it, and it
So
gives
it's like
it a
cursive.
different look.
In elementary school, it's like cursive these days. It's something you can learn.
It's kind of the long way, and it's more, and you can, come up with a final version of your cartoon that's nothing but ink and paper, and that's, the finished version you can hold in your hand. It looks just like it looks when it's published.
Right.
But I decided when the Record Journal told me, we can have full color at no extra cost on every page. I did a couple of them, and it took so much longer. I went back to black and white, and then I said, boy, those color ones really look good. So eventually I just caved, and I spend more time than I used to, but I much prefer the look of a full color cartoon. Not just highlight colors, like I see some of the national editorial cartoonists will just have 2 or 3 colors to highlight parts of their drawing. I think if you're going to use color, full color is the way to go.
If you're going to go color, go all the way.
Because I grew up with comic books and the Sunday Funnies, and
Right.
they were full color and very colorful.
I remember the full color Sunday comics were the only ones that really got me excited because
Sure.
when you see that color insert, something about it just made my brain come alive, and I was like, oh, this is for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's how they got all the kids, those Sunday color comics.
They
I
hooked
never
me.
read any other ones that were black and white. I only remember the
The
Sunday
daily ones? No?
No. Only the Sunday ones got me.
The daily ones are really tiny today.
Now, as someone who has turned out a regular cartoon every week for more years than I've personally been alive, I would imagine you can speak to the value of practice and dedication to one's craft. So, as a seasoned veteran, what expectations do you set for yourself and your work when you sit down to draw a cartoon? And I guess that really comes down to, like, how do you define success in your workshop?
I have a point to make. Sometimes I don't. Might be obvious sometimes. I'll just, draw something that's topical, related to the news of the day, and maybe something just a little bit goofy that doesn't make any particular point. But if I have a point to make, hopefully I make it clearly, or make a point that gets people talking
Right.
and debating with each other. In terms of the technical aspects of it, need to be punchy, I guess. Like it's, you don't have to sit there and try to understand what's going on.
You want it to leap off the
It's
page
quick.
as somebody,
You digest it quickly and understand it hopefully quickly.
So usually if you look at an image and it takes you more than 8 or 10 seconds to figure out what's going on, then you know that you've missed the mark and you'd have to go back and re-examine.
Right. Or if it's really late at night and I'm tired, I say that's good enough this week.
Which, when you're turning out a cartoon every
Sometimes.
week for 40 years,
Sometimes that happens.
I think you're given a couple bye weeks for sure. Now, one might think with the expectations, like you're talking about in the deadlines of the professional world, even drawing cartoons can sometimes be more stressful than fun.
It can be stressful, but there's something about finishing it and being able to submit it. And I used to have to drive to Meriden with it. I lived in New Britain for a while, and when I could email it,
That's the
great.
cinch,
Scan,
right?
email, and then it's just a sense that you took care of your assignment and something's completed. So week after week, I get something that I finish, and again, this is a side career. It's the only drawing I do is the Record Journal cartoon right now. So I have my day job managing construction projects in Hartford Healthcare and a hospital network, and once a week I get to use another part of my brain.
Yeah.
Answer to a different boss, do something. I'm not saying my day job isn't fun. There's a lot of enjoyment in that, but different kind of fun.
Absolutely. Exercise in a different, your exercises your brain and your creativity in a completely different fashion.
And it's in the middle of the week usually. It used to be Wednesday nights. I deliver on Thursday nights mostly now, and that's fine. It's still well in advance of the deadline.
But it's not sectioned off to the weekend. It's part of
No,
your
that's
work week,
right, and that's when it appears. But I have to deliver it to them by Friday morning. So what also happens sometimes is I do get tired. I don't quite finish it. and I wake up earlier on Friday morning, and sometimes the night's sleep clears my head, and maybe I haven't inked it yet, and I say, ooh, I'm going to change the wording because this is better, this thing I thought of overnight or that I just thought of now with my coffee.
Sometimes that extra period of gestation really brings up something special and new that pops into your head with clarity.
If I'm exhausted especially, and that, as I get older, maybe that happens more.
As a former and possibly, again, high school teacher, I can tell you I waited until the morning of, because I might have a good idea. I've heard that from my students plenty of times. It doesn't always work. Sometimes you get good material. Sometimes it's very, very hurriedly written paper and cat scratch. But do you feel like with meeting these deadlines and being so dedicated to this craft for so long that you're still growing as an artist? And after all these cartoons, are you still waking up excited about what you get to draw next?
Absolutely, very much so. Yeah, I mean, I wake up sometimes wondering, oh boy, I don't have a subject yet. How am I going to do
what
this?
Am I going to draw next?
It always
right?
comes together, and I'm almost always perfectly happy with it when I pull it together. And like the students that you're talking about, I mean, it's probably true if they claim they work best under a deadline. I think a lot of people do.
We all do. Yeah. We all really do. It's a scary thing. That ticking clock really puts it right in front of you and says this has to happen. Mm-hmm. I know some sketch comedy writers who don't know how to work without the ticking clock.
That's right.
So they wait until about 5 hours for the end of the day, and it's like, okay, now let's get serious, because now it is serious. And some people swear they have to work like that, and some students have told me year after year it's the only way they can work. But sometimes having things come to you on Friday morning should be more of a luxury than a method of madness.
There might be a way to improve it at the last minute before clicking send to the editor.
That extra night of sleep really gives you time to really digest, and sometimes things clarify when you wake up.
True.
That's why you keep that little notepad by the bed too, for those one-liners that you think of when you're sleeping, you can't remember when you wake up.
I do that.
Now, we've talked about how time really can change almost anything, and given enough time, fashion will change really quickly, but given enough time, even science changes, right? Our understanding of the world will change. So there really nothing is safe.
Pluto's not a planet anymore.
Pluto's not a planet, then is a planet, then it's not a planet.
That's
so
right.
It really depends on the day you wake up and what year, what information is relevant at the time. Now, your career has spanned 8 presidential administrations. How has the political cartoon itself really evolved throughout your time?
In the industry.
In the industry, yeah.
Yeah, they look different. I think they look simpler now because print media and daily newspapers, for sure, have gotten smaller. So I think when you look at a cartoon from the 50s or 60s or 70s, they're bigger and they tend to have a lot more going on in them. And mine do as well. I mean, I think when they're running larger, you can put more detail in it that will be visible and noticed. They're all simpler now.
So it's really the size of the paper itself is getting smaller, so
factor,
the size of the cartoons are getting smaller in relation.
I mean, I work in the same original size that I have for 30 years at least. I used to work in much bigger, I guess these are bigger from the very first few years, but I haven't changed the size that I'm comfortable working with in terms of an original.
So you draw the original in the same size, and then they reshape it to fit what they need.
Pretty much exactly like that. And that's been probably 30 years worth of those exact dimensions are the size I work in.
I didn't realize that they would be shrink. For some reason in my head, I thought the different size cartoons, you just decided to draw this one smaller and decided to draw so that you're drawing all of them the same size, and they're making that determination after the fact.
That's correct.
Based on what ads they have to fit or what articles or how long.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that makes more sense than how I, for some reason, thought that it was done. So I'm glad I asked. Well, now that you mentioned that you have a full-time job that you do, and then this has always been part-time freelance work for the last 40 years, but now I believe that your full-time job is coming to
I've decided to retire in September.
Congratulations. That's an amazing, monumental decision.
Yeah, I've been at this hospital for almost 33 years. And
so you're a fixture there as well?
Yeah, I'll miss, there's a lot I'll miss about that job, but I'm energized and really excited about, like a next chapter or second career. This will become, I'll be an illustrator, a cartoonist. Full-time as a freelancer.
So that brings me to my next question. Do you have any drawing projects in the work that you're really excited about? I know that single panel is really what you're well known for, but is there a possible return to long form? Are we bringing Timmy the Human Diamond back?
We may bring him back. Just
see him in all his glory?
Because of your interest. Nothing concrete right now, but you know, if it looks like I can work on a project of my own like that for an extended time, I might do it. What I'll try to do is find clients. You know, about 25 years ago, I tested the waters. I worked out a job sharing at Hartford Hospital with someone else. We both wanted to go half-time. She was a mother of very small children and wanted to spend more time with them, and I was trying to become an illustrator. So I had a few clients. I had some major publishing houses that I did work for. The people there, I don't think they're still in the same job, so my contacts are long gone, but that's the kind of work I'd like to try to get.
To return to.
Yeah.
It's a little more variance and hired gun per se, where you get to draw something new and take different approaches to different kind of work.
Yeah, and you get an assignment and, you know, meet authors, and it's pretty nice.
Is that form of the idea of collaborating with an author on a project really excites you? Since
Yeah.
I imagine you do a lot of work alone in your
Exactly.
workshop, so the idea of collaborating is something that could be new for this phase of your career?
Well, you know, my day job, I worked on construction projects, and
Right.
you're in part of a team, and I do love working as a team. Everybody contributes something different. You get together, you know, months go by, and then you have an end product, a new building or a new department that you've renovated, and, you know, wrap it up in a bow, and you've got, you know, it's done.
Right.
This is, I speak with the editors occasionally and the writers. For the most part, I just read the paper and come up with the ideas, and it's just me. So it might get lonely. But I have, you know, young children at home and a wife, so.
So they'll feel those quiet
And they're very
moments
supportive.
anyhow.
Yes, they're very supportive of it.
I'm sure that there are some aspiring cartoonists that are watching us have this conversation either right now or on some later viewing when it's replayed. Before we come to a close, I'd really love to give you an opportunity. Do you have any insights or advice that you can offer to them as they begin to draw their way into the world?
I would say just keep drawing. I mean, draw as much as you can. You know, if you can develop your own style, I think it took me kind of a while to do that, but you know, look at the professionals and copy things and find your own voice. And I guess believe in yourself. And you know, in my case, it's sort of a dream deferred, and that can work too. I mean, you know, you can do something else for a while and get back to it if you're still passionate about it, or do it on the side. But I would encourage anyone who's interested in this sort of thing to just do it. Draw, show your drawings to people, get feedback. And
So put yourself out there and take another stab at it every time that you finish something. Keep going.
yes, and you know, one of the things I have to learn, and you know, maybe younger people have a better sense of it, is where are the clients? I mean, the print, you know, newspapers are folding up and dying, and they're letting their editorial cartoonists go. Even when the paper survives, they just cut them. They
So
don't
it's
have them
it's
anymore.
really feeling like the end of an era, maybe.
It's feeling like a very much a dwindling supply of customers, and but you know, there's a lot more online, and you know, maybe my teenage kids will help me figure out how to do that sort of work.
One door shuts and the internet
Yeah.
window opens. We just got to give it time to see exactly where that window leads. But I will say, having had the opportunity with the Hercules team to go through 40 years of your cartoons, the last thing I would ever say was to call this a dream deferred. If anything, it was.
No, I've been lucky enough to have someone.
Yeah, no, it's been to the ability to do something full time and to raise a family and to still have your passion and your workshop and your voice and to express yourself for 40 years and to be involved in town, local, and global politics. It's something that should be commended.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's one of the reasons why we have you here.
I do feel blessed that it has worked out in that regard for me. Yes.
Well, the town of Wallingford also feels the same.
Okay.
So we would just like to take this moment to thank you for being here and to thank you guys at home for watching. We will be bringing Kevin back for another long-form interview very soon to talk about his connection to Wallingford, the Record Journal, and our local politics throughout the years. Thank you for watching.